and they facehooved into the night. "It's like this," said Luna. Princess Celestia, tired after a long day, yawned widely. It was almost time for the lowering of the sun, and she was standing ready and waiting for the big moment with her sister, Princess Luna, on one of the high balconies which surrounded the upper towers of their royal castle in Canterlot. With the sparkling white spires of the city laid down below them, the paling evening sky above, and with a distant peal of bells tolling the knell of parting day, Celestia breathed deeply, relishing the final warmth of the blazing star so many millions of miles away that gave her not only her name, but also her cutie mark and, most importantly, her exalted position in equestrian society. It was due to her innate and unique skill in raising and lowering the sun, alone and unaided, which had first brought her, and her sister Luna likewise, with the raising and lowering of the moon. To Star Swirl the Bearded's attention, that was nearly 1200 years ago. Tired of having to coordinate teams of regular unicorns who wore out usually after only a single day, he was relieved to have finally found ponies who, after a little training, could reliably perform these duties alone, day after day, without ever tiring out. And so he had conferred on them the gift, or curse, of eternal unending life, and tasked them with the duty of not only keeping charge over the heavenly bodies, but also with the rulership of Equestria, no mean feat indeed. Perhaps it was partly out of loneliness without her sister by her side, who knows. That's certainly what Celestia always insisted, whenever any pony asked her to give a reason for the creation of her school for gifted unicorns. But there were some ponies, Luna herself amongst them, who were instead convinced that Celestia was searching for a replacement, that she might someday retire from public duty and live a more normal life. And so, this is the real crew of the matter. Her school focused entirely on the teachings of magic, and left the more mundane elements of life to the students' own desire to learn them. No math, physics, or languages in her school. Despite this patchy curriculum, however, Celestia was certain that she had done an admirable thing in setting up her school. For how else, to be sure, should the world have ever found out about Princess Twilight and Cadance? All of these thoughts flashed through her mind in the blink of an eye, the merest millisecond after reading an open paragraph of the letter which had suddenly poofed into existence before her, making Luna jump. With almost a half an hour to go before setting the sun, she had ample time to read through it, and did so. "Dear Princess Celestia," she read, "Twilight seems to have no idea how sex works." This caught the princess's eye immediately, "and I have been forced to explain it all to her myself. This was embarrassing, to say the least, and the aftermath even more so. As you were her teacher for a long time, might I ask why she was never learning about sexual relations while at school? Spike." After reading this confusing letter through a couple of times, Celestia passed it to Luna, who had been watching her sister read, with one eyebrow cocked in curiosity. As Luna read the short missive, her inquisitiveness turned first to concern, and then to confusion. "Did you never teach Twilight about any of this, Tia? Or any of your other students, for that matter?" Celestia coughed uncomfortably. "Well," she began, "we sort of just focused on magic. You know, because it's a school of magic," she stressed, as though this last point should have been obvious. "Yes, I know that," Luna admitted patiently. "But surely you're not just teaching your students only about magic. They'll have to go into the world someday, find husbands and wives, make families of their own. They spend such a lot of time here, their parents probably don't get a chance to give the talk to most of them. So, maybe you should." The Princess of the Sun swallowed. "You mean," she inquired, "the talk about how to get a job?" "A job? You mean a careers lecture? No, I don't mean that," Luna hastened to correct her sister. "I mean, you know, the talk that all parents give their foals. About, you know what?" Celestia owed and awed in faux understanding. She then shook her head. "I'm afraid I'm not quite sure what you mean, Luna dear." Luna gasped in exasperation. After 1,000 years on the moon, she was still getting used to the modern pony society, and in her day, one simply didn't use the S word. But it seemed that she would have to stoop to everyday pony's level, if she was to ever break through her sister. "Oh, come on, Sally. You know, the talk about sex. Oh, right. That talk." Celestia was nodding again, eyes open wide. "Yes, that talk, I see. Right. Sex. Yes, that's it." Luna murmured, glad to have finally got through to Celestia.
It sounds like Spike has had to take your place in having the talk with Twilight, and I can't imagine that she's alone in her oblivion, so perhaps for the sake of other ponies or dragons, you should start, explaining it to them, to your students.
Her elder sister's face contorted in confusion again as she tried vainly to understand.
Tell it to them?
She muttered. Then there was a pause, and then...
Luna, what is it?
Now it was Luna's turn to be thrown off balance.
What do you mean, what is it?
Celestia explained.
It's just that, you see, I don't...
She trailed off, looking rather embarrassed. Luna gently rubbed her back, reassuring her.
It's alright, take your time. We're not in a hurry.
Celestia stared at the floor of the balcony below them, drawing comfort from the perfectly white, pristine surface. So, like herself, if she were a kind of stone, Celestia thought she'd quite like to be whatever sort of stone the balcony was made of. Almost 2 minutes went by with Celestia unblinkingly thinking these pleasant thoughts, eventually realizing that nothing was likely to happen if she didn't prod her sister out of her daze. Luna took the princess's shoulder and shook her gently from side to side.
Luna to Tia? Luna to Tia, are you receiving?
With a start, Celestia returned to the land of the living.
Oh, sorry, Luna. I was just thinking about rocks.
Luna rolled her eyes.
I see. Have you thought about what we were talking about? Like 5 minutes ago? What? Oh, that!
The realization shone brightly in Celestia's eyes as she remembered suddenly where she was, who she was, and what she was supposed to be talking about. Immediately, the bashfulness returned.
Well, the problem is...
She began confidently, determined not to let her uncertainty show again.
I've never really... I don't know what... You see, the problem is... I don't know what sex is.
She announced at last, in such strident tones that several members of the palace guard, stationed in the courtyard 8 stories below, glanced up concernedly in their direction. Luna Facehooved, sighing in resignation. As unbelievable as it might have been seeming to other ponies, who perhaps knew her sister less well, she had always, in the deepest, darkest recesses of her mind, feared that this day would come. It had always felt inevitable in their youth that it would someday be she, Luna, who had to explain everything of a carnal nature to Celestia. Their parents weren't around, and Star Swirl was certainly never going to take one for the team. Luna had held out a vain, forlorn hope that, over the interceding millennium, her sister might have, maybe read a book? It seemed that she, Luna, just as Spike had before her, would be forced to give the talk to an older sibling. She took a deep, steadying breath, letting it out slowly.
Right. Let me explain. Sex.
She began, wincing internally at having to use the dreaded S word.
It's the process by which most creatures, including ponies, reproduce. You know what reproduce means, don't you?
She checked. Celestia nodded, for all the world like an eager schoolgirl, willing to learn something new and exciting, and Luna continued.
Good. Well, you know how a mare has...
Again, she shuddered at the thought of all the words that she was about to use.
A mare has a vagina. You're aware of that, aren't you?
She paused, giving Celestia time to respond, and she nodded again, seeming somewhat surprised that Luna should think that she might not know that already.
Of course I know that. A mare has a vagina, and a stallion has a penis.
Luna swallowed uncomfortably.
Yes, that's right, a penis. Very good. Well...
She shook herself together.
When a mummy and a daddy pony love each other very much, they do something very special together.
The Princess of the Night's words faded into silence, and she pondered how to phrase the next most awkward part. Celestia was still watching her with rapt attention, so that she could hardly back out now.
Oh, how I empathize with you, Spike,
she thought to herself before carrying on.
So, when a stallion and a mare love each other very, very much, in a romantic way,
she amended hastily, much as Spike had just a few days before holding this same conversation with Twilight.
They do something called having sex. It's a special private thing that they only do with each other, and it shows how much they love each other.
Again, she fell silent, and the pause that followed Celestia eagerly asked.
So, what do they do exactly?
Luna sighed. It was now or never.
It's quite simple, really.
She explained, trying to put her tone as light as possible.
When they're ready to have sex, the stallion's penis becomes hard, and he puts it inside of the mare's vagina.
Listening not to what she was saying, but only to the way she said it, an outsider could be forgiven for assuming that she was talking about something as mundane as the best way to sellotape a parcel, which was the effect that she had been aiming for. And to an extent to her plan seeming to have worked, Celestia was nodding thoughtfully, her mind evidently considering this piece of information carefully. She eventually spoke, asking,
And most adult ponies know this, do they? Yes.
Luna smiled.
I'm pretty sure most adult ponies are aware of this. I see.
Celestia thought again for a moment.
And do they do this sex thing often?
Luna blushed.
Well, that's a very personal question. Some couples might do it several times a week or even every day, and some might only have sex for only once a month or something, but I think most couples have sex once or twice a week.
She was beginning to feel less uncomfortable now, with using such intimate vocabulary. The fact that Celestia was being so matter-of-fact all about this, and was obviously treating this as she would any other lesson, with the notable difference that here she was the student, not the teacher, helped to make the odd situation feel almost normal, as though it was a perfectly average occurrence for a 1,000-year-old demigod to explain the technical aspects of pleasure-based copulation to another 1,000-year-old demigod. Celestia's next question, however, rather threw this trend out of whack.
So,
She asked curiously after a moment's thought.
how often do you have sex?
If Luna had a mouthful of water, it would have been sprayed unceremoniously over the heads of the guards below.
Well, that's a rather a personal question.
She explained hastily.
Oh? Why? It never ceases to amaze me.
Luna thought to herself.
Just how naive Tia can be at times.
Out loud, she continued.
Well, sex is a very private thing for a couple to do. It can be a very embarrassing topic to discuss normally, and now...
She muttered to herself.
It's not usually considered polite to ask a pony how often he or she has sex. Ah, I see.
The Eternal Princess of the Sun fell silent again, pondering this latest piece of information. After a minute or two, during which blissful, tranquil silence reigned supreme, she inquired.
So you say that sex is when a stallion puts his hard penis into a mare's vagina,
Luna nodded.
and sex is always a very private thing?
The Princess of the Night nodded again, wondering where this was going, and she didn't have long to wait.
So, why is it...
Celestia posed thoughtfully.
If sex is a private act, how come I sometimes see you reading magazines with pictures of ponies having sex in them?
Luna blanched. This was going to be a long, awkward night.
Shit.
You know, sometimes I wonder if I should still keep reading while I'm sick or not. But, I mean, hell, dude. As long as, like, everyone enjoys it or, like, most people enjoy it, I'm happy with that. And you know what? It's... it's not that bad. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this fanfiction reading, as well as some of the more recent ones with my sick voice. Anyway, see you in the next video.